the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. It's either Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but we'll just go with it. We got a packed show today. We are going to be talking about the proposed PDGA rule changes in just a moment as we take a look at things that may come to the rules. And this is a pretty substantial update, so we're going to spend a little time on it. Then we're going to talk to Corey Ellis, the European Open champ, about his first Elite Series or major win, obviously, this one being a major. And we've also got Nate Heinold joining us a little bit later. He's the president of the board of the PDGA, as well as the TD of Ledgestone coming up this weekend. We'll make our picks as well. You know that. Josh, Ledgestone,
it's here.
It's here.
I can't wait. We get to see Northwood. We get to see. I'm excited to talk a little bit about that course, but there are just so many great things about Ledgestone, and I love Ledgestone Week. So
okay. So what are the other great things about Ledgestone besides Northwood?
Sunset. I want to talk about this.
Okay. You know what? Good point. I agree with you.
Sunset Hills might be one of the best FPO courses on tour. So you add that in there. I think that's incredible. And I've also said, one thing I really love about Lake Eureka is I really feel like it is just like what could be the prototype for urban disc golf, right? You're playing around a water tower through off of a bridge. I mean, it's park golf, but it feels urban, and I love that because I think that there's potential. There's a course that we play here in Idaho. It's called the Snake River Landing. It's a temporary course. It's only used for this tournament, and you're playing essentially along a green belt in the middle of a downtown area where there's literally buildings and businesses on both sides of you, and you're playing up and over this fountain that they use. So it feels very urban. And I think that that's kind of an opportunity and possibility for disc golf tournaments to be in major cities. So that's another thing I love about Ledgestone. But Northwood,
all right, well, more to come. More to come. We'll talk Northwood in a bit. First up, we're going to talk about these proposed PDGA rule changes. Now, there's a lot of stuff here. Some of the things we're just going to go right by, and we're not going to talk much about them. Other things we will spend a little time on. So let's begin. We're just going to go in the order of the PDGA page. First things first. Now you're allowed to move casual obstacles in between the front edge of your lie and further back from the target. So you used to have to be in a spot where you could place a supporting point, like a foot or a knee. You were allowed to move a stick or something like that. Now you can just kind of sweep the forest if you want and move whatever you want out of the way so you have a nice space to run up. What do you think about this one, Josh?
Well, this was the really controversial one that there were videos about because people were laying down on their from their discs to see how far back they could get to clear their run-ups, because I think this change just got instituted last year that you could only do it within essentially where your supporting stance could be. But in the past this is reverting back to the past where you can clear stuff essentially if you're doing a run-up in the fairway and you're taking 3 steps, right, that you can clear that stuff out all the way up that run up. This is the right call to me. I think this was a poor safety choice. I don't like the idea that players, because I think many players weren't opting to take a standstill. They were just doing the run up anyway and hoping for the best. So I think this is just a player safety one. And I know Paul Macbeth moved a stump once that really should have been part of the course, and that's why they made this rule change. Do a better job of defining what's part of the course and let people move sticks that are in their run up.
I loved when he moved the stump. That was amazing. Okay, here's one that kind of bugs me, though. I agree with you. I think it's a good change. All players will now be required to keep score for the entire group. This is from the PDGA. Quote, "This ensures even distribution of scoring duties and maximizes scoring integrity. It also limits scoring penalties to the player who submitted the incorrect scorecard." Okay, the last point makes sense to me, but I have to say, the idea that making everyone do it is good even distribution of scoring duties, I don't know about that. That just makes everybody have to do the same exact task. I don't really think this makes a lot of sense. maybe in the day and age where like you can just do it on your phone, it's not that big of a deal, but like why make everyone take out their phone and do it? It just, I feel like there's a better system than this. I don't think the previous way was broken, to be honest.
So as somebody who often just like didn't have the guts to just tell people that I wasn't keeping score again, I was always one of the two that was scoring. I know that other people are going to have to score too, and that makes me feel better. And I know that sounds so petty, but the number of people who I walk up to, it's 8 o'clock in the morning and they go, yeah, my phone doesn't have enough charge to get through this round. And I'm like, I know you're lying, dog. Like, it's not 2003. I know your phone can make it 4 hours. I know that's not true. It brings me a happy sense of satisfaction that other people are like, you can't use that excuse anymore.
But this just puts the misery on everyone, Josh.
Misery enjoys company.
Net worse for the world to have to do it this way.
Misery enjoys company. But I see your point. I mean, you are right.
Next one. You now have to be a PDGA member to compete in a C tiers. Before it had extended down to B tiers. Now it extends down to C tiers. And they're creating a new D tier status. So I'll pop down here to the D tier land. D tiers are like I think it's 1 day.
1 day, 1 round.
1 day, 1 round events. Thank you. I was trying to get down to the spot.
No, you're good.
You can pay $10 as a non-member to play in the D tier. It also solves a flex start issue by making flex start formats legal, but only at D tier and league events. So you can't do flex start C tiers anymore. You can only do flex start D tiers. But I mean, essentially, if D tier is what C tier has been, but if you want to have more than 1 round, 1 day tournament, you have to have it as a C tier and you have to be a member. I'm fine with this. The PDGA should protect its members and let people have the opportunity to compete more if they have a PDGA membership. Seems fine to me.
I agree with that. They're also expanding resources for tournament directors, right? You've seen all the ads for the TD hotline that's available for tournament directors. If you're going to continue to expand those services and support for tournament directors, I've played in C tiers that have more players than B tiers did, or A tiers even, a couple of pre-pandemic levels. So I'm with you on this one. I think C tiers it's absolutely fine to begin including requiring memberships on C tiers. It's good with me, especially since they created the D tier accommodation.
Tournament directors have to give scorecard to each player in the group, either digital or physical. No surprise given the other change. You cannot randomly mix divisions for the first round of a C tier. You are allowed to do that at a D tier. Not much to say here. Yeah. Sudden death play is a format where the player or players with the best score on a hole move on to the next hole, and all other players are eliminated. And then we have a new thing, the option to use what is called an aggregate playoff. An aggregate playoff is a type of sudden death play where the competitors play a set of 6 or fewer holes that has been announced by the TD, where the lowest total score on all holes wins the playoff. Players who are tied after an aggregate playoff would proceed to standard sudden death play on those same holes, unless a different set of holes has been announced by the TD. This is an interesting one, Josh. Do you like this idea of aggregate playoff, and especially at the elite level and on the tour?
On the elite level, I think this would be fascinating, right? There's often the designation, and it highlights later on, a little bit in there too, but later on, that the TD can set prior to the tournament what the playoff series will be, so it doesn't necessarily have to start on hole 1 as long as it's announced in advance. I like this idea. I'll be honest. I don't want a playoff to just be that one hole. It feels a little anticlimactic sometimes, and it's it's heartbreaking when they miss the putt, but it's like, oh, we're going to a playoff, you get all jazzed up, and then it's done. I would love the idea if the playoff was, and I think of Worlds in 21, imagine the playoff was 16, 17, 18, and they had to play that series again. Like that is an exciting playoff, and I personally prefer that to the just single hole playoff format.
I think I do too. I think it's kind of cool to have the opportunity to like make up for a bad, like there's so much randomness in disc golf already. Like having it be like a one hole, we're just going to play this random hole. And, if you're just bad at that hole, you lose.
Right.
It's like, dang, that sucks. So I feel like this is a nice way of balancing out some of the randomness and like kind of testing more pure skill. I definitely want to see an elite event try it. And hopefully the Pro Tour gives some tournament the ability to have a testing ground to try it out. Let's see how it feels when we actually watch it.
Yeah.
The groups can now be put on the clock. Okay, so rather than just being able to penalize an individual player for playing too slow, now a group gets put on the clock. Now, this is what they do in the PGA. So this is pretty interesting. Basically, a tournament official can come over and say, all right, you're on the clock. And then they start to follow that card because they're causing backups or something. And then they can assess warnings and penalties for in some cases potentially the entire card if they are not playing quickly enough. And here's why I like this. It is on the rest of the group to make sure that the slow players in your card do not play slow. And this puts actual pressure on that to happen. And it means that the excessive time stuff and the people who take forever to throw their putts, that stuff's going to get ironed out because groups don't want to get put on the clock.
The other thing I'll add is at an amateur level, I think a big problem that you'll have are groups who just kind of meander after a hole. They finish a hole, they stop by the basket, they take score at a basket. They're laughing, they're hanging around, and they're taking their sweet time to just make it to the next hole. And it's not. I mean, those players aren't technically on a 30-second clock because they're not throwing a shot. And so to kind of enforce this at a group level, I think is just a good thing both at the amateur level and the professional level for different reasons, in my opinion, but both seem like effective and hopefully good changes.
Alcohol warnings are now only allowed at D tiers. At C tiers, if there's public display or use of alcohol, you get DQ'd. So again, this is just another change moving down from C to D. There's a bunch of changes that have to do with majors and elite series specific stuff that we're just going to basically ignore. It's a bunch of, stuff that's not that important.
It's putting the two things in line, really, right? Like,
yeah,
it's practice and things that already happen at Pro Tour that probably weren't by the book that are now becoming by the book because it's best practice for elite series events.
A tiers, there have to be some more. There's more requirements about offering divisions. If you have a pro-only A tier, you have to offer MPO and FPO. AM-only A tiers have to offer MA1 and FA1. Pro-Ams have to offer all four, etc. So essentially, you're not allowed to just have like an A tier for MPO only, for instance. You also have to allow for practice time. And so just kind of like making it a little bit more professionalized at the A tier level.
Yeah, it's good thing they cleaned up that whole Disc Golf Pro Tour mess of canceling a bunch of FPO events, right? That would I hate to see that on the eve coming out of this rule change.
There's something about line of play continuing on the nearest playing surface following a line if the current playing surface ends. I feel like this is just sort of technical.
Yeah, you've gotten into the minor changes section where.
Oh, I'm in the minor changes. Let me scroll through real quick and see if there's anything I even feel like is worth mentioning. Probably not. Oh. A much needed clarity to a common situation, a bridge spanning an OB creek. The TD will need to clarify their intentions in this situation. If the course rules are unclear, use a provisional. In general, if the edges of the water are the OB line, then if the disc is completely within that area, regardless of the item it is resting on, then the disc is considered OB. The out of bounds line extends a vertical plane. So, interesting.
All right.
A bridge is not good enough in most cases to call it safe.
Okay, interesting. Uh, yeah. That's the only other one I saw that was really.
I think that's about it.
Yeah,
There's like
yeah,
some little stuff, cleaning up some things, blah blah blah, clerical items. We'll skip all that.
yeah.
But as has been the case the last couple of times we've seen rule updates, most of this stuff makes sense and feels like it's coming from feedback from players and is going to improve the overall like the game. I mean, I really like how aggressive the PDGA is about updating the rules every single year and not letting stuff that's annoying hang around.
Yeah, I think as well as more and more tournaments are being played, more players want to play tournaments. I appreciate the increased professionalism of it. Really feels like all the way down the line they're sliding the divisions and the tiers of tournaments up in the level of professionalism, all the way from major down to the new creation of the D tier. C tiers are now more professional. A tiers are more professional. Elite Series events have been clarified to be more professional. I appreciate that. I think that's a needed response to the overwhelming number of players who want to participate in competitive disc golf.
Yeah, and Josh, I know you keep an eye on what's going on online. How are people feeling about this online, would you say?
Oh, man, I think it came at a little bit of a weird time because it also came with the PDGA Board of Directors release, so I haven't seen as much commentary on this. The big one that I saw, number one, were the changes back of the stance and the clearing of obstacles. People are very happy about that. I mean, there were videos mocking that rule change about how players could game that rule because of how much they disliked it, and so I think that's been the biggest one. I think it's going to be interesting to see the C tier change, and the problem is I think the most dedicated online disc golf community aren't going to have a problem with the C tier change. I think what's going to be interesting is when you have those who don't follow, right, who are completely unaware of these rule changes, and they go to sign up for C tiers, and they're being charged an extra $10, and someone gets DQ'd because they brought a beer with them to a C tier. Like that's going to be a little bit of a culture shock for players who are used to playing C tiers a little bit more recreationally, and I think you're not really going to see the input of the community nearly as strongly until these are implemented and they start affecting people.
I will say I was just scrolling through Reddit to kind of get a sense of feel. There are a lot of people complaining about the C tier changes. That like people who are casual and want to play a 2-round tournament that's a C tier all of a sudden have to have a PDGA membership, and that's going to keep them from participating because they're not just going to buy a PDGA membership to play one tournament. And I think there's an argument for that. Perhaps in my view, the easy solution here would be to say D tiers can be 1 day, but anything over 1 day, you have to have a PDGA membership. But if you do 2 rounds in a day and you call it a D tier, I feel like that should be okay, right? I mean, I don't think you want to overly punish people or overly require memberships. It's a tough balancing act for the PDGA, I think, on this one.
Sure.
Because it also sucks when you can't get into a tournament because a bunch of people signed up in the click race, even though they didn't have a membership.
Yeah. So maybe you do priority registration for PDGA members for maybe B tier and above or something. Again, though, I think it goes back to the point you made. It's PDGA protecting their members who have paid money into this organization and want to reward them for that. And like, I know people are upset about that, but I think that makes a lot of sense to me why the PDGA would make that choice.
A lot of people seem cool with the everybody keep score correction. I think you're not alone, Josh.
I know but I'm not.
I just feel like it is creating an unnecessary amount of additional work, and it's because of bad apples. But like the solution isn't to punish everybody. That's just what I think.
Here, let me ask you a question, Charlie. When was the last tournament that you played where you were keeping score on the PDGA Live app?
Well, I will say it's been at least a year.
Okay.
And the thing is, I love keeping score.
Oh, really?
So that's not an issue for me. I like to keep score.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. In fact, when I play casual rounds, I'll keep UDisc stats for the whole group.
And I'll do that too at UDisc, but when I'm in a tournament, like I don't know, I would prefer not to at a tournament, but I always get stuck with it because of those bad apples like you talked about. So I think you are a little bit unique there, but everyone I've heard from is pretty excited that everyone has to keep score. I think it also creates like there's nothing worse when a player like who isn't keeping score because their phone is dead at 8 o'clock in the morning is walking to the next tee and you're like hollering after them trying to figure out what their score was.
Oh,
they
yeah.
have an earbud in, right? Like that's just the worst. And now everybody has to be engaged in that process, and that is valuable to me.
We'll see how that goes. And we'll see
Okay.
if they stick with this change, too.
True, these are
I'm
proposed.
really interesting. They are proposed. They are not finalized. So we will see. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Corey Ellis, European Open champ, joins us.
Pound's the best of the best. It's the quality, the craftsmanship, the vision for what a bag could be. Let's start from the beginning. I didn't choose Pound, I chose Levi. I trusted Levi to make the best bag possible.
He's always trying to innovate. He wants it to be perfect. And I think he's the kind of guy that nothing's ever perfect.
I trust the product, I trust the people behind the product.
At this point, I don't think anyone's disputing that it's the best made bag.
Joining us now on the Upshot is the 2023 European Open champion, Corey Ellis. Corey, I'm sure that does not get old to hear that. Welcome to the program.
Definitely not. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, thanks for joining us. Now that it's been more than a week since you've won and you've traveled back to the U.S. and been doing the podcast circuit and all of the things that you have to do, go to Discraft. I saw the new commemorative disc coming out. What's this last 10 days been like for you?
It's been nonstop. I mean, pretty much I won the tournament and hopped on a plane literally the next evening, got to the U.S., drove 3 hours, got a hotel, drove another 7 hours home. I had 1 day home, and then I went straight to Discraft. We filmed that stuff and worked out some other things that's going on. And then we did have a couple of days off in Chicago, which was nice. Just kind of exploring around there. I'd never really seen Chicago. It's a pretty nice city, at least where we were downtown and stuff. Got to hang out with Dylan Cease. He's a super nice guy, just down to earth. And then we made it here a couple of days, Sunday. And I got a round in. I've got pretty much all my practice rounds in. We just did the Jomez practice round today.
So just to kind of jump into the tournament a little bit, I want to go back actually to round one. And I know you've probably answered a million questions, and we're probably going to ask you some that you've already answered, but you're having a pretty good round in round one, and then you have that stretch on 15, 16, 17 where you go 5 over par, and you finish 4 under. Are you feeling at that point like I've blown it, I'm out of it? Or did you think like, no, there's still a path back to, being in contention?
I mean, I don't feel like I blew it because, hole 17 didn't really feel like my fault because I made a putt for par and it came straight back out at me and landed and rolled OB. So I just had to re-putt and make that putt again for a double bogey. So it didn't really feel as much as I blew it. Like I knew that I still basically shot 6 down that round. It just didn't show. And then I never like to give up like as much as I can. I knew I was only, how many strokes was back? 6 strokes back, and there's 3 more rounds to play. So that's a lot of golf, and it's not an impossible stretch to make up. So I just tried to, focus on one shot at a time.
I feel like I personally watched you have 2 or 3 spit outs brutal straight back at you. How many of those did you have on the weekend total?
3. There was one, the last round, which everybody saw. There was also one round 3 on hole 5. That was pretty much the same thing, just spit straight back out. And then the one on round 1 on 17. So, I mean, that's 5 strokes or 4 strokes and 3 putts. So, I mean, people say, I've heard people kind of say, oh, well, if AB didn't, chunk it up on 16, then Corey would have, probably not won. And I'm like, well, what if those putts stay? You can say that too. What if my putts stay? That's 4 strokes right there.
The what if game is always a race to the bottom. No one ever wins that. One of the things that stick out when I look over your stats from the weekend is your OB rate. You only had 2 OB strokes, which is the best on the entire field. And one of them, as you point out, in round 1 was the rollout or the rollaway that really wasn't something that you could control. So 1 true OB stroke all weekend. What do you do differently when you approach preparation for a course like the Beast that does have a good amount of OB? And what's your game plan to ensure that that is the case? Do you intentionally take less aggressive lines to ensure that you're playing smart, or is that just something that you consider to be a strong skill set of yours?
I definitely am not the best at not throwing OB. If you go and look before that tournament, I'm like 112th in OB rate or something for the season. So OB has always been like a weakness. So I think it goes to show that clearly when I throw the disc in bounds, good things happen. So also I want to note that I don't think that they were counting the bunker rule on 16 as OB because you're not actually gaining a penalty stroke.
That's right.
Because that same round 1, I threw OB off the tee, and then I threw one in bounds, and then I went for the green and threw OB, and then I laid up, and that's how I got the double bogey. So the one shot I did actually throw OB was on hole 3. I think it was the 3rd round. And it just never turned enough. It hyzered out of bounds. And then I still saved a birdie, which I was pretty proud of. I thought that was one of the best shots I've ever thrown in my life, to get all the way up and put it underneath the basket. I thought that was pretty sick. I think they had it in the top 5 shots of the tournament.
Yeah, we definitely saw that in the coverage, and it was an incredible shot. Incredible shot. It must be crazy to think back on those little moments like that where with how close the margin ended up being. Obviously you had 2 strokes going into 18 in the final round, but that those little moments may have made the difference. And I know you could say that about literally anything, but are there specific moments that stand out in your mind as like either spots where you felt like, wow, I really have it this week, or maybe that you felt like, you were suddenly in a position to kind of take advantage and get to the win?
I felt really good when my drive went through the trees on 11, because that's kind of a luck factor hole. And when my drive actually made it through and parked it, I was pretty stoked on that. Anybody would, of course, even if you're not playing for the win, like you throw your shot on that hole and it goes through the trees and you're like, yeah, finally I didn't go OB, because it's so easy to just fall straight down in there. And that's like coming down the stretch, I didn't really, I didn't ever think about the scores until hole 15. I never look at the scores until late when I need to at any tournament. It doesn't matter what is going on. And that's just because I feel like it can only impact your round negatively. Personally, that's how I feel about it, because if you're thinking about the scores, you're not thinking about your shot that you have in front of you. You're too busy worried about other things, and that can affect your game, I think.
So when you go up to hole 16, before you teed off, or maybe after the tee shot, but before Anthony Barella started throwing, what was your game plan for that hole?
My
You knew
game
the scores at
plan.
this point, right?
Yeah, so I looked at the scores after I threw my tee shot on
Okay.
15 because that tee shot wasn't going to change no matter what. I was committed to throwing
Okay.
it straight at the basket and letting it finish. And we get to hole 16's tee
Okay.
pad, and I knew that he had a couple strokes on me, I think it was, and I had a stroke on Kyle, and I can't remember what there was, like Ezra and Eagle, but I saw their names, but I didn't even think about them for whatever reason. I was like, oh, it's fine, I still have some holes. So I get to 16. AB goes first, and I saw he put his drive close to the OB line, and I thought to myself, oh, you have to put it closer to him, to that way you put the pressure on him to get on the island, because you have to play for birdie. Like he has 2 strokes on you. There's no room to lay up right now. So it wasn't until he started. I was kind of blacked out there, like not even paying attention to him throwing, because I'm just like, oh, he's gonna stick the island, and he misses the island. He misses the island, and then I kind of like woke up and I was like, oh, I need to look at the scores. Like what's going on? And I think they show that in the coverage of me going back and looking at the scores, and I bushnelled my shot, and it was 280 feet, like exactly. And I told myself, you can throw a zone on a hyzer 280 feet. You've done it a million times. Just throw the shot. You can do it. And that's what happened.
It's amazing. It was an incredible finish, and then the shot you threw on 17. We heard you on the broadcast calling for it to flip up, and it finally did, and then it landed right there under the basket. Were you nervous while that shot was in the air?
Yes, because I knew, I was about 90% sure that my disc was going to turn, because I know how, that buzz flies. But until it starts to turn, I was pretty nervous that it wasn't going to turn, until you see that it's turning. As soon as it started to drift, I was like, you did it. That's parked. And then I was just calling for a green flag, So yeah, the answer is yes. I was nervous until I saw it to start turning.
Yeah, and thinking back to some other times when you've been so close to a big win, obviously MVP is the one that stands out the most. Did this have a different feel at all for you coming down the stretch than it did then? And maybe did you learn something from that MVP Open miss?
I remember the MVP Open. Again, I didn't check the scores until after I threw my tee shot on, I think it's 14 there, which is the water carry hole. After I threw the shot, I knew I had to look at the scores and figure out what it needed to do. And I saw that Simon had come in, and I needed to birdie out to have a chance to win. And to gather myself to birdie all of those holes under that pressure, knowing I needed to throw, was a huge step for me. I feel like, with the way I handled the pressure in that situation, because those are not easy holes to birdie in any given situation, and to do it under pressure was a huge accomplishment in my book, just for me personally. And I throw the drive on 18, and after I threw that drive, that's when I felt the most pressure, was waiting to throw, because I was so pumped up. I knew I threw the best shot I could possibly throw on that. And I remember all I could do was think about, control your heart rate, breathe, deep breathe. You have to control your heart rate, because, this is your moment. You've been waiting for this win forever, your entire life. Like, you're going to do this. and it was just poor execution on the upshot. And I think that it took that tough loss and D-Glow and even Portland this year to be, I was only a stroke back there on 18, and I could have gone into the playoff with Adam and Gossage if I played the hole for birdie and didn't go for eagle. So it just took those tough losses, I think, to be able to handle the pressure in this situation.
The coverage and the footage from the Disc Golf Pro Tour, right? MVP being the most obvious one, but these other tournaments that you've kind of highlighted this year have kind of created a narrative that you've been in the close races down to the end and then come up just short in the big pressure moments. Now that you've won European Open and have a win, not only just, any win though, a major under your belt, do you feel like you are going to be better prepared going into those pressure moments that you seem to find yourself in with quite regularity?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it showed at European Open that I can handle myself under pressure, but it also, the pressure is still there. And even Paul Macbeth and Ricky and Eagle and anybody is human and feels that pressure, and it's not an easy thing to deal with. I'm not saying that, oh, I'm never going to feel this pressure again. You know what I mean? Like that's just unrealistic. And I think that I'm more adept to handling it now that I've been in that situation. Ricky has always told me, you only get better with handling the pressure and you can't recreate that in the practice field. The only way is to be in that situation. So, yeah.
Well, obviously you said about MVP that you've been waiting so many years for this moment. How cathartic an experience was it for you to stand in front of those thousands of people in Nokia?
It was amazing to see all those people come out, and it's just unreal, man. The amount Finland loves disc golf is incredible, and I wish it could spread a little faster here than it already is. It's already spreading fast, but man, it's everywhere there. Everybody knows why you're there. When you say you're a disc golfer, they're like, "Oh, you're playing the European Open?" It's like, it's incredible to see the kids just get so excited, especially like when Paul walks by or Ricky or Calvin. I guess I'll probably be the same way next year. But to see it consistently after my rounds, they just start screaming their names, and because to them, they don't know if they're ever going to see them again. They're in another country. So they're just like, please sign my disc, and, it's just really cool to see the growth over there. It's incredible.
I know one of the hot topics on social media after you made the shot and landed, it stuck the island on hole 16, was the high five that you gave your wife, and you hear her say "ow" and shake her hand afterwards. Is your wife's hand doing okay? Have you guys laughed about that since then?
Yeah, for sure. There a lot of remarks about it. It's kind of funny. I had Andrew Fish come up and gave me a hug and congratulated me when I saw him yesterday, and he said, "How many people have given Molly a high five?" And I was like, "Actually, not that many." I was kind of surprised. I guess they're afraid to hurt her hand even worse.
That's awesome. I guess I'm curious. Do you think this is going to change the trajectory of your career, given that it's your first not only Elite Series but a major victory, and the increase in profile that comes with? How do you think that's going to change things, if at all, for you moving forward?
I mean, I don't know much I can't say how much it's going to change. I hope it changes for the better. This obviously just keeps going, and I am competing for the win, over and over again. That's the best thing I can do. That I try not to play any tournament if I don't think I can win. So if you see me out there, you best believe I'm playing to win.
Do you look forward to any tournaments coming up? Worlds obviously is a big one, USDGC, but I guess more specifically, are you looking to MVP this year as an opportunity for redemption, feeling like you can come back and especially with this confidence that comes from winning the European Open, have an opportunity at redemption at MVP?
For redemption at MVP and D-Glow. I've gone third and then second place last year, or second. It's hopefully I can get the win and go 3-2-1 with that one. But
I say that's first is the only place left to go, right?
Yeah, for sure. To answer the first part of your question, Idlewild I look forward to a lot because there's a lot of family and friends come out from West Virginia. It's only about 2.5 hours from my house, and it's just awesome to get to see everybody there, and I get to stay at one of my good buddies' house for the week, and it's just always a good time. It's my favorite course in the world because I've played it so much, and it's just so iconic, and it's a lot of fun to play.
Well, let's look ahead to this coming weekend. I mean, we've got Ledgestone. You finished 5th here last year. I know that you think you have a chance to win because you're playing, so I won't even ask you about that. But what do you like about this tournament, and what will it take to win it?
I like how we play an open course and a wooded course, the mix of the two. I also like that we get 2 shots at each course instead of like a 3-round where we only play one at like Northwoods or something. But it's always a good time as long as you're throwing the disc in bounds at Eureka and trying to stay out of the rough at Northwoods. If you can do that, that's a recipe for success at Ledgestone.
Well, hopefully that OB rate from European Open carries over to Lake Eureka then.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay.
I think you're good. Yeah.
Okay. I guess when you look at, I want to ask you a little bit about and the structure, namely the silver events being worth the amount of points they are. You have the elites at 100, the elite plus at 150, the playoffs at 150. Is this and then the majors obviously at 150. Do you feel like this is a good structure? Do you like the way the points are broken out? Do you feel like they should be allocated a little bit differently? Or for Ledgestone, for example, do you think those kind of tournaments should have that designation?
I think that honestly, majors should be worth the most points, considering we only play 4 of those events, throughout the season. If we even make it over to European Open and get the chance to play the 4, sometimes you only get to play 3, and 2 only count towards points if you play those 3, and you're just playing in the US events. The Silver Series, the way they've been laid out has made it tough for me to want to play a lot of them because, in my opinion, at least for me anyway, I want to rest my body. And there was a time, like, I think it was OTB all the way through Preserve or something like that. Like, there was no time off at all. There was OTB, Cascade, Beaver State, Portland, the Montana tournament, DDO, Iowa, Preserve. And then it was just like, there's some people that played every single one of those events, and I give them props, man, but it's hard on your body. And I think that we need time off between events like that. As far as the points go with the Silver Series, I mean, we only take 3 of the Silver Series points with us at the end. Like, so you only need to play 3, and I'm not even going to end up playing 3 events this year with the Silver Series ones. So I just tried to focus on the bigger events, and because I that's worth the most points, and to me it's the most important to play the Elite Series and the majors.
I would love to hear just a quick background on how you got started playing disc golf. I'm sure you've told this story before, but I think, for listeners, it can be helpful to hear a little bit about that. What got you into the sport, and how did you get to the point where you are now as a major champion?
Well, it's been quite a long ride. My dad took me out in '99 the first time. I was only 5 years old to play at Rotary Park in Huntington, West Virginia. And that's forever my home course, no matter where I say, wherever I'm at. Some people say, their home course is the whatever tournament you're playing this weekend. But I kind of played off and on growing up with Dad because he had to work so much, to take care of us. And so I didn't really get into disc golf until I was about 11 or 12 to start playing tournaments, and kind of got really good really quick because actually it's a really sad story. My aunt passed away in a house fire in 2009. My dad's sister, and that summer right after that, he got laid off of work. So that whole summer we played disc golf like rain or shine, 2 to 3 rounds a day every single day for like 3 months. And in that span, I got really good really fast because you're coming into your teens, and you're growing and learning how to play, and your body's still awkward and stuff, and now so I think that's kind of really where it went off. That fall in October, Dad took me down to Rock Hill to see the USCGC, the final round. And I remember seeing, I think it was Double G, and I want to say Robbie Bratton throwing over the lake, like the distance competition. And they had these shirts on, and across the whole back in big letters said, "I throw further than you." And I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen when they threw across the lake. And I was just like, this is amazing. I think that moment, seeing those guys throw across the lake, is what propelled me to, like, that's what hooked, me into playing tournaments and wanting to throw far. And that was probably the point where I thought, maybe I could make this my life.
Amazing. Did you have other players that you like looked up to as you were coming up?
Oh, absolutely. My dad's best friend, Tom, his name's Tom Epperly. He kind of took me under his wing, and me and my dad and him played a lot, like growing up from that point on, because he had been into tournaments. He had gone out west and played the Memorial and some stuff like that. And he was probably the best player around the area, except for Johnny Sias. And I don't know how much you guys know your disc golf history, but Johnny Sias is a Hall of Famer, 86 world champion, and he's won a world title in every other age division besides Masters, and he is 70 years old. And he is, if you look up his PDGA Hall of Fame, you'll see that he is one of the greatest putters of all time. And growing up, for me, it was a struggle on the putting green. That was always what held me back. And so I just worked endlessly on putting and I've tried every type of way you could putt imaginable. And it was just kind of my goal to, be as good or better than Johnny at putting. And without him, I wouldn't be the disc golfer I am today, because he pushed me and has taught me so much, even not knowing it, just watching and listening to things he said over the years has definitely made me the golfer I am today.
Very cool. And I guess I have to ask you, do you feel like you found the thing for putting, or was it just practicing a lot that got you to where you are?
Both, I would say. Practicing a lot is the number one thing, but you can't do bad practice. Like, you can't be changing up with different putters or different grips or different stances all the time, or like, you have to develop a putt and stick to it, and pick a putter and stick to that. And that's probably the biggest thing I could tell you about putting. First off, the second one is as good as putting as Calvin Heimberg is. I would not teach someone to putt without bending their knees. And Calvin is I tell everyone he's the exception, that you don't have to use your legs, but that's just also coming from him putting in so much practice in his style of putt that he's developed a way that he doesn't have to use his legs. But the number one thing I teach when I teach putting is it starts from the ground up. Just like a foul shot in basketball, you see everyone bend their knees, go up, and it's all one synchronized motion. And that's what I try to do with putting.
It's awesome stuff. What's been the most fun part of this whole experience of winning this tournament for you?
The most fun part, competing with the best players in the world, man. I mean, we're all friends on that card, and like, it's just awesome to get to compete with these guys like Kyle and AB and Calvin. They're amazing guys off the course. It's just to get to spend this time over there, to make this dream a reality, to take my wife with me to Finland, and for her to be here with me on tour the entire time. It's just memories that we'll remember, never forget.
Well, congratulations once again. We appreciate you making some time for us, and hope to have you back on again very soon.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Good luck at Ledgestone.
Thank you.
Corey Ellis with us here on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upshot. Great to hear from Corey. Soft-spoken guy who just goes out there and just plays some fire disc golf. And you know what? I respect it.
That's let the game do the talking, right? I mean, once you've got the major, that's all you got to do. So I really hope that he's right, that this can kind of jumpstart him, and that he's going to be able to close out some wins, because we've seen him so close so many times, and he's a good guy, and I hope the best for him. Absolutely.
Well, we'll see what he can do at Ledgestone. He's definitely played better in the second half of the tour historically.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens here coming up this weekend. We're going to talk to Nate Heinold right now, president of the board of the PDGA, as well as the TD of Ledgestone. So we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, Nate Heinold joins us right here. Joining us now on the Upshot is the PDGA president of the board of directors and the Ledgestone, as well as other tournament TD, Nate Heinold. Nate, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, thanks for joining us. We just got the results of the PDGA board election. They just came through, and you have been reelected. It was very close between really four different folks. But you and Jeff Hungerford get reelected. So congrats on that. Were you surprised to see the vote as close as it was?
I was not. So I think that I didn't see a lot of chatter online about the election almost whatsoever. It didn't seem like there was even that much interest. I mean, I tried to drum up things with a few blogs or posts here and there, and didn't seem like a lot of activity. And that, to me, indicated that it probably was not a lot of people voting, and which means probably bunched voting. And so I did think it would be close. And I was fine with not winning, to be honest. So I was very prepared. My wife, even more so, prepared and accepting for me to move on, to be honest. So.
Well, you did run, though, so you wanted to be back.
I did, yeah.
And I'm sorry, how long are these terms? I feel like there's 3-year terms. It feels like voting is constant. I think part of the reason maybe that it feels like there's less voting interest is because there's a vote every year, it feels like.
Well, and there is, because we can't have all 7 board spots up in the same year. You couldn't have that kind of turnover. You have to stagger it. We have 3 people coming up next year, and then we go 2 and 2 people.
Got it. So, now that you've got another 3-year stint in front of you, what are have you given thought to what some of your priorities will be in this next 3 years?
I have, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest 2, we just announced one of them, I think, yesterday, in terms of requiring membership for C tiers and introducing this D tier. And along with that, loosely tied is requiring everybody to keep score. We even had issues with some of our flex events here recently. Go ahead.
Sorry, we're laughing because we just got done talking about this in our earlier segment. So, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Great, actually.
I disagree with requiring everybody to take score. Josh thinks it's a good idea. I just feel like it's inflicting pain on everyone for no reason.
I agreed with you, Charlie, and I think I actually voted against it. But then at Worlds, believe it or not, okay, this is when I was convinced that it was right. Junior Worlds, 2 parents were keeping score. Somebody came off the course. Everybody was celebrating. Cards were wrong. Parent had left. Another parent had left. Parent came back. The 2 people that didn't keep score, it was so much chaos and confusion. The scores were changed. We ended up getting it right. And I thought, wow, okay, if everybody had kept score, that wouldn't have happened. And then at a flex event we just ran at Eureka, which I shot a 10-13 rated round and still lost to Chris Dickerson in the same group by 11 strokes somehow. But we had a group of 4 people, and they built their own card. I forget what state they were from. This was actually a few years ago, and we had an issue at the flex event this Sunday, but 4 people came from, I'll just say it, Iowa, built their own card, played Northwood Black the first day it opened, and they all shot the front 9 12 strokes above their rating. One guy was rated 870 and somehow shot even par. And so having everybody keep score should help with that issue as well. And so I became convinced, though, after Worlds when that issue came up. So, but that priority with the requiring membership, for C tiers, creating the D tier, and then my biggest priority that I would like to do is the course funding project that I talked about in my platform. I'm trying to get the PDGA to step up and fund many courses in areas that don't yet have disc golf all over the country and world.
I think that sounds like an amazing initiative. You see so often communities trying to fundraise for 10 years just to get enough money for a set of 9 baskets. So, we have a smaller disc golf community, and so I think that's excellent. Now that you've won re-election for board of directors, are you going to seek I assume that's not for the spot of president. I assume you'd have to run again for that. Are you planning on seeking to be president of the board of directors again?
By default, I think yes. I don't think anybody else is willing to do it. So it was probably 20 hours of work the last year per week. And it's a volunteer position. Some people online assume we get paid. They assume that I get to make these choices to give myself all of these fancy majors. What they don't see is, nobody bid on that event. Let's have Nate do it. Or Nate was the only bid, thank goodness, or whatever. And so, but I do think that I will be president again. I would just say, because I don't think a lot of people want to take on that role, to be honest.
Well, you brought up something I was going to ask about anyway, which is, there are people who say that you're using your influence as the president of the board to, enrich yourself financially through various tournaments and other things. Even when you recuse yourself, you are still influencing the board, or you have a lot of influence at the PDGA. So, you got next year's Worlds, for instance. What do you say to people who feel like you are, self-dealing a little bit on the board?
No, that's a good criticism. I would say that I don't get paid to be a board member. I don't get. We lost money running the 2022 Junior Master Worlds. I'd love to show that P&L. We didn't really make money off of this year's Amateur and Junior World Championships. I'm not a manufacturer where I can just write that off as a marketing expense because, like Dynamic or Innovator or Discraft, if they run the event, a little different where it's branding for them. Yeah, it's branding for Ledgestone, but I can't really brand Worlds as Ledgestone. So I've been asked to run majors before when nobody else bid. I bid on the 2023 Champions Cup, and there were 0 bids besides mine. I've bid on Junior Worlds before with no bids. I've bid on Amateur Worlds before with 1 bid. I bid on Pro Worlds in 2019 with a bid from a random town in Texas and me for Peoria. And so I feel like if you were to ask the PDJ staff that, they would say, we need people like Nate, or in the past, Doug Bjerkes, because we don't have a lot of people willing to run majors.
What do you see as the solution to that issue in trying to obtain more bids, better bids, and create kind of a more sustainable more sustainable majors ecosystem?
Yeah, it's going to be some work. We need. It used to be where the local club could run the event, but here, Ledgestone starts in 2 days, and I have 95 staff members that are paid and hundreds of volunteers. For Worlds this year, we didn't have enough staff, and I still had 55 and 150 volunteers. People aren't as willing to take a bunch of time off work anymore to volunteer for a disc golf tournament. So really, the PDJ will have to put more resources and more time and more people into assisting the local operating committees. There's just not enough willing people who can take the time to do it. And so the PDJ is going to have to step up. And I think they're up for that task. Ideally, people like me and Jonathan Poole and UC continue to push the bar and encourage other TDs to want to turn this into a business, because for all that I think I've been able to accomplish, it wasn't even a business for me until late 2019 when I finished the books for Pro Worlds and said, oh, I didn't lose money. I could maybe try to do this bigger. And then COVID hit, and then everything, multiplied, and I hit kind of the lottery there. But we need more people to see it as a business and say, I could actually do this and run events for a living and do that. But it's still tough because it's a very competitive marketplace to get people to come to play events.
How is business right now in the broader Ledgestone universe? I know you sell a lot of discs, you get a lot of exclusive stuff from Discraft, but the market, we've been hearing from everybody, is starting to cool off a little bit. It's harder to move stuff. It's, stuff is sitting on shelves longer. So how is that going?
The market in 2020 was well above 2019. 2021 was multiple times above 20, and then 2022 was still up. But at the end of that year, so last year, saw a stabilization. Now we've definitely plateaued, and we're beyond the plateau in the industry, in my opinion. Even for Ledgestone, we are in that same boat. We're lucky enough that we host a lot of large events, and people still like to buy stuff in person. But I think the market is definitely saturated, and I think you'll see, unfortunately, I've seen some businesses close down because of kind of the oversaturation, the supply chain. You couldn't buy stuff for a while, and then now everybody has stuff to sell. So I definitely think it's a tight market, driven mostly by the economy, but a lot because people are taking vacations. The service industry, you look at Delta, they've had their biggest 25 days ever in company history in the last 4 months. So people are flying, they're renting cars, they're taking vacations, they're playing disc golf tournaments. I mean, Ledgestone has 2,200 players. D-Glow in 12 days has 1,000 players. They're doing those things, but they're not buying product as much. So it's kind of a balance. We're lucky enough that a lot of our business is still the service business of running events.
I want to pivot with a question a little bit to a decision that was made recently. The Disc Golf Pro Tour came out with an announcement of the United Series in states where they were concerned about legal challenges to the gender eligibility policy that was released this off-season, and are going to allow this concurrent eligibility requirement that says if any player meets any of the three rather than all three of the gender eligibility requirements, then they may play in FPO. The announcement was paired with Worlds being included with that same criteria, effectively allowing Natalie Ryan, for example, to play in Worlds. What was the decision behind allowing and changing that gender eligibility rules for the World Championships?
As the public release said, that was a request from the LOC based on the fact that the gender eligibility policy that was enacted and announced last December was done a year, after their bid had been placed. And so that request came from the LOC to the PDGA, and that request was accepted. The United Series, that was, obviously I can't speak for the Disc Golf Pro Tour there. But I think they were pretty clear in their release, why they chose to do that.
Ledgestone will have an FPO division, and it looked like for a while there that it wasn't going to have an FPO division. How do you, as the TD, feel about potentially having lost FPO, now having it back, and Natalie Ryan participating?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I am an ardent supporter of the FPO division, and I stand with them. I obviously did not want to see the division canceled for the event. I didn't even want to see it moved. And I shared that opinion with the tour. At the end of the day, I've also made my position very clear on the gender eligibility and that policy. And so I was prepared to support the tour in whatever decision they made. But as a TD, I wanted the FPO division to play at Sunset and at Northwood. And that was my opinion because I believed that a majority of the FPO field would prefer to play these larger events as intended even if it meant a loosening of the policy. And so if the FPO players hadn't felt that way, then I probably would have felt differently. But I want what's best for the FPO division. And in this case, if they feel that it's better for them to compete with transgender athletes in certain states, then as a TD, I'm fine to support that.
How do you feel about where the PDGA's stance is right now? This has obviously caused a great deal of stress, money spent by the PDGA, money spent by the Pro Tour. It's been the biggest story in disc golf this entire year. It could have waited, right? The PDGA didn't have to enact this policy and become one of the first governing bodies to do so. Do you feel like you still made the right choice as the PDGA? And then I guess the second question is, should it be stricter further down? I mean, we're seeing a lot of people complaining, about the fact that at A tiers, the rules aren't as strict as they are for the Elite Series. Where do you feel like the PDGA should go from here?
I think where it's at right now is where it needs to be. I think that the reason why the election was so close is because, even though Jeff and I both won, I think a lot of people look at it as, wow, the PDGA is straddling here. They compromised, or they're trying to make both sides happy. I think right now both sides probably are unhappy. I think I've heard from plenty of people who are the pro-fairness crowd, whatever they want to say, that are very unhappy. Hey, why can't this be enacted at C tiers, A tiers, B tiers? And then, of course, the other side of the inclusion side, obviously very unhappy. And so the bottom line is it's a tough needle to thread. I think this is the way to go right now, though. I think that for those that say it should be strict all the way down, it's public knowledge that not only were the Disc Golf Pro Tour sued and the PDGA, but tournament directors were sued in multiple states. So if those TDs want to run their A tier and B tier and take that chance, that's what they'd be looking at. And then on the other side, for the pro-inclusion crowd, 85% of our members have been very clear about how they feel. And additional governing bodies, World Athletics, Cycling, have come out with a policy identical to the policy that we passed in December. And so, in fact, World Athletics has been very outspoken, saying the IOC was wrong in their assessment, and that track and field is a very large organization that's come out against the IOC. And cycling took a very short period of time, 3 months, to make their review process, and they came down with their new policy within the last 30 days. And so I think that the policy right now that was decided by the Pro Tour, as just my personal opinion, I think it sounds like it was the best way forward with the information that everybody has.
I mean, I guess I want to ask one more quick thing on this, and then I think we can talk Ledgestone. Did the PDGA at any point consider wanting to back the Pro Tour financially to fight these lawsuits? Since this is a PDGA priority, as the policy that the Pro Tour is enacting the PDGA's policy in this case.
The Disc Golf Pro Tour, per the written policy, has the option to utilize either of the eligibility standards in that policy. And so that was the Disc Golf Pro Tour's decision per that policy. In terms of the financial question, I'm not aware of any of those conversations.
It seems like there was quite a bit of pressure on the Pro Tour to accept and enact the PDGA's policy, though. I mean, I know what's written down says that they could go either way, but this all rolled out within 24 hours, and the Pro Tour, it's in private conversations, it feels like I've heard that they felt like they had to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they'd feel they'd have to. I understand wanting to have the majors and the tour have the same policy, but right now here we are, and some events won't have the same policy, and so I understand what you're saying, but I'm not the Pro Tour, and I can't speak on behalf of the Pro Tour and why they would feel pressured. That may be the case, but the PDGA went through a very diligent process, as we announced last December, had a very exhaustive survey, subcommittee report, and the board at the time made the best decision that we thought we could make, and obviously adjustments have to be made sometimes.
All right. The topic will be back around again, I am sure. But let's talk some Ledgestone. What's new in 2023? I think I want to start with that.
No major changes for Ledgestone this year. We have a new drop zone, hole 17, Lake Eureka, which was obviously inspired by Maple Hill, hole 8. And then I added a little more out of bounds on hole 10, as if Eureka didn't need more out of bounds. And then we've cleaned up Northwood significantly, and knock on wood, it looks like we may have live coverage at Northwood on the front 9. I lost a lot of hair trying to make it happen, but yeah. So that is going to be hopefully the biggest change, is some live coverage at Northwood. I can't guarantee that yet, but it looks promising. And we'll have 2,200 players, the biggest tournament in disc golf by a magnitude of 2, because D-Glow is the one right behind it at about 1,000 players. So super excited for just a lot of activities and a lot of disc releases. And we've got 50 different, we have Jawbreaker Z, Get Flipping Meteors to Special Lunas to all the above. So
Charlie, you lost your hair from worrying about coverage at Northwood, right?
That's right. That's actually what did it. In fact, when I was 16 years old and I started losing my hair, I was just preparing for the potential. Like, I knew in my mind that Ledgestone wasn't going to have live coverage.
See, Nate, you don't have it that bad, right? I mean, at 16, that's dedication.
I like it.
What changes were you able to make to get the cell coverage at Northwood in order to have live coverage?
The Pro Tour made some investments in some equipment, and that was very helpful, it looks like. But the major thing, we needed wired internet to Northwood. And we tried for 2 years to get a cell tower. In fact, I basically told Verizon they had a blank check, and they tossed around big numbers, and I was prepared to pay it just to, make it happen. And Verizon told us this year, hey, we got it. They sent 10 people out, did surveys, blah, 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 pulled out at the last second. So I thought it was done. I had really no options. And then the tour came to me and said, hey, we have this option, but you got to get a wired connection to Northwood. And it was like 2 months ago. And I was like, man, that's okay. How much is it going to cost to get fiber to Northwood? $150,000. And I was like, well, that's pricey. So I was able to work it out with Comcast to get their connection to Northwood. And it was live as of 4 days ago. So we made it happen with the very fast work of Comcast.
Did you have to pay $150,000?
We did not. So I would not have paid that amount. So we did not pay a lot of money for it, fortunately. So
wow. How did you manage that? Got some blackmail on the Comcast people or something?
I'm a good negotiator, is the bottom line. So I'm a good negotiator. So the Comcast was very generous. I mean, the contract per month is super expensive to make it happen long term, because the construction costs were being mitigated if we signed a longer term contract. But still, it's very much worth it.
Well, I would agree. I don't know how much you're aware, but I love Ledgestone, and especially Northwood. It is one of my favorite courses, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what, in your opinion, makes Northwood so special and unique as a course, and what it brings to the tour.
I think when I design a course or lay out a course for out of bounds, I'm going for I'm trying to go for a number. For MPO, it's 1020. That should be 1,000, or that should be a scratch round. So if you shoot, if you shoot 3 over, you're at a 10-20 rating for that round. And to do that, you can't just make it stupid hard. You have to try to find a way to punish bad shots and reward good shots. And I think that Northwood, better than any wooded course, if you're off the fairway, you're probably going to make bogey unless you throw a couple miraculous shots. And too many wooded courses just don't punish bad shots. And you can put out of bounds, and that's what you have to do at courses like Winthrop and Eureka and Fox Run, because there's not enough trees. But on wooded courses, I think Brewster Ridge is a good example. Maple Hill, those courses punish bad shots. But too many wooded courses don't. And I think Northwood, above any other course, simply punishes bad shots and rewards the good shots. There's not trees in the middle of fairways. There is the ability to scramble, but it is really challenging if you get too far off the fairway. And so that's really what I think Northwood does better than almost any other course, is it brings the best wooded player to the top, and there's not a lot of luck.
Josh, I want to hear your thoughts on that and on Northwood a little bit more.
I think that's spot on. The other thing that I really enjoy about Northwood is that I feel like so many of the holes have decision making. That's something that I think a lot of wooded courses begin to lose a little bit, is especially on hard wooded courses, fairways tighten up to the point that it's difficult for players to have true decision making. There's one line and one line only, and if you miss that line, you're in the woods. I think one thing that's something that I appreciate about Northwoods is that there is a lot of cases where you have landing zones on holes that are optional. You can play, like, the aggression does give you rewards if you successfully execute it, or you can play it safe for the par, and it has probably my favorite hole on tour, which is hole number 12. I love hole 12 at Northwood Black. I think, I don't know if it's like, I don't know what it is, but something about watching players just get eaten alive by that hole makes me so happy. I think it's so fun to watch. So that's for me, in addition to what Nate said, what I really appreciate about Northwood.
I think as well, I don't quite share Josh's enthusiasm for, and that, actually I do, for players getting eaten alive, so never mind. But I think I'm being facetious, but I think what's great about Northwood and specifically hole 12 is the amateur that's watching on Disc Golf Network says, wow, I've taken a 7 on that hole before. It was my best hole ever on that score, or my best score ever, but I've hacked it up that fairway, and usually it's for an 11, and they watch Barella or Macbeth. I shouldn't say Barella because he's birdied it twice in one tournament, but you've watched players take a 6 or a 7 and you say they're human, and that hole absolutely humanizes, if that's a word, even the best disc golfer.
Calvin Heimberg has the course record. Shot a 59 last year.
Yeah.
It was 1068 rated. Does this prove that PDGA ratings are fraudulent?
No, but what it does is for courses like Northwood, W.R. Jackson, you're not going to get to an 1100 rated round. There's the scores are too high and the points per stroke are just too low. So it's easier to shoot a 1040 rated round out there, but it is almost impossible to shoot 1080 because the scores are going to be, a little more bunched. You can't physically, you can't shoot 14 down at Northwood Black. It's just not possible. And so I think that's just, it doesn't say that the rating system is flawed. It just says that on those really hard courses, what it actually is saying is putting doesn't matter as much. If you look at a course like Northwood, Calvin, a good round's a 65 at Northwood. Well, they may have like 7 putts of consequence, right? Maybe less. So that means there's 57 throws that are of consequence. But on a course, a shorter wooded course, you're seeing putts every hole that matters. I think that's, and you're seeing less strokes. You're seeing, 51s and 52s. And so that's really the difference, is that those really hard courses, it's much easier to hit the SSA, but it's much harder to get an extraordinarily highly rated round.
I appreciate you giving a very full answer to my joke question. So, obviously this has become one of the biggest. I mean, it is now officially. You said it just now, right? It's the biggest disc golf tournament on the planet.
Yes.
Once upon a time, it was GBO, but this is overtaking it.
It was GBO. It's been Ledgestone for 3 or 4 years, I think.
Yeah.
So,
well, what's the purse going to be? We all know it's going to be huge. So, we have a number.
I think we're just for DGPT. So MPO, FPO is going to be. I'm looking at the calculator, but at least 145,000.
Big money.
If I had to guess, probably outside the Tour Championship, I'm pretty confident it will be the biggest purse of the year. So outside of majors, sorry.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. Has it gotten harder to fundraise for this tournament and offer this big money, or has it gotten easier?
Our sponsorship is definitely up this year. I've had many companies reach out to me wanting to get involved, larger companies. I haven't had to do as much work getting sponsors. However, a lot of our fundraising comes from disc sales, and those have definitely flatlined, plateaued, and in some cases have gone down. And so that part's been harder. But the sponsorship side of it, just the straight, here's 5,000, here's 20,000. The 20,000 is much tougher, but the $5,000 sponsors, those are starting to come to me without me reaching out to them. And that has been nice. And it shows that we must be doing something for the sponsors that works.
You also offer, for the amateur side, the very much the most impressive amateur player pack of the season. What's in the players pack this year?
Yeah, it's big. We are giving them this year, and I have to look it up because it's so many items. But we are giving them the new Grip ATS bag. They get 4 limited edition Discraft discs. They get a Grip 6 belt. They get a nice patch hat, some sunglasses, a shirt, tube of Zanfell, a tournament patch, a Merrill coupon, which I believe is 30% off. They get a dry chalk bag. They get a Grip 6 coupon. And the most recent item, okay, ready for this? Stroop waffle cookies. So from our newest sponsor, Jarrett Verberg out of Fenton, Michigan. So
the reason I asked, not only to highlight that players pack, but do you get a lot of those items at cost or even lower as part of the sponsorship in order to then kind of keep the amateur money inside of the payouts and the rest of the tournament? I guess is that a huge sponsorship part of the tournament, is getting those kind of player packs?
Yeah, I definitely, the cost to fulfill every amateur player that comes to the event is about $55 higher than their entry fee. And so that doesn't sound like good business sense, but so we obviously want to get a lot of people to come, and then we make money off them buying merchandise, staying in hotels, tourism grants, hotel kickbacks, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the items are donated. Most of the items I get, not at wholesale cost, but generally distributor cost. I'll buy 5,000 of an item and I'll use it for 2 years, or I'll buy 10,000 sometimes, or 3,000 of this. And so I'm generally able to negotiate pretty good pricing or have donated items because I buy in bulk for Ledgestone, D-Glow. We have other amateur A tiers we run. I have many other tournaments that we support. I have A tiers in Mississippi and in Rockford and et cetera, and we help get them items for a good price. And then we have a wholesale program where vendors buy stuff from us and they'll say, hey, we're running a beach here. We need sunglasses that cost $6. Can you make that happen? And yes, we do. We bought 10,000 pairs of sunglasses and we got them at a good price. And a few years ago, I bought 20,000 stools that I designed overseas, and we did that for a while. And so I am able to get good pricing because of kind of the buying power that I have for, being able to take that risk, knowing that TDs need stuff not for an arm and a leg.
Interesting. Mega volume purchasing.
Yes.
All right. Well, any thoughts on the competition side this year? Just, we've obviously seen lots of different players win at Ledgestone. Not a lot of course changes, so perhaps we see repeats, but, a lot of crazy stuff. We've got, 3 straight major winners, new major winners in a row in MPO. We've had a wild season. We were just talking about it on our Tuesday show. Lots of first time, lots of Elite Series and major winners, period. So what do you think? What are you expecting this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Tiger Woods era and the Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal era, where I rooted for dominance. And for disc golf, that was Macbeth for many years, and it was Paige Pierce. And now this year, I mean, obviously Kristen is on a different level, but she's not playing D-Glow or Ledgestone or Idlewild actually. And so FPO with Paige Pierce then out, I wouldn't say it's up in the air, but I mean, certainly Missy's defending champion. Katrina's won here 5 times, so I'd put them as they're probably going to be there at the end. On MPO, I have no idea. I think there could be, I mean, I would love to say it's good for the game to have that much parity, but it may not be. I have no idea, but I would say you could pick 20 names, and I think, there's probably, they all have a chance. I'd say Ricky, Calvin, Barella, Chris Dickerson, they've all had success here, but it could easily be 15 different names.
It's going to be wild. Well, Nate, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on. Always great to hear from you, and good luck with everything this weekend.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Nate Heinold with us here on The Upshot. We will be right back. Welcome back to The Upshot. Night has fallen in our rare nighttime recording. Josh he's on Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? Just needs a little lighter.
That's right. I sat in the sunroom, and we've gone long enough now that the sunroom is no longer a sunroom. It's the night room. So
it looks very pleasant there, I will be honest.
It's quite nice. I mean, we've got a storm blowing in. We're supposed to have some rain for the next couple days, but it's been so hot that I'm welcoming it. So it's quite nice. I've got the windows open and enjoying not being hot for the first time in a couple weeks.
Well, Josh, Ledgestone is here. It's time to make our picks. We've got to get our over-under in. And I guess any final thoughts on the course or the tournament itself?
Yeah, one thing we need to talk about, Nate, I mentioned a little bit at the top, but Sunset Hills, I mean, that course, I think that this weekend especially is going to be an exciting weekend for FPO, right? No Kristen, no Paige. It really does feel, as Nate said, wide open. And it's on a course that you combine the difficulty of Northwood Black with that wooded course, and Sunset Hills is just absolutely phenomenal to watch for the FPO division. You have players like, Own, like Missy winning last year, right? Like those players have real... It is set up for their game, and I think it highlights a different side of the FPO field in a way that I just am so excited for. So if you're not someone who tunes into FPO often enough because Kristen's just going to win it all, this is the week that you got to tune in.
And Sunset Hills is one of the best tuned courses on tour. It's not some kind of coincidence that it's fun to watch when they actually design the course for FPO players.
Crazy.
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it. Time to make our picks. I'm going to go first. I always let you go first, but I'm going first today. FPO, here we go. In my 3 spot, Own Scoggins. She's getting that Upshot bump this week. I don't think I can quite pick her to win, but she was second here last year behind Missy, so it wouldn't be shocking. It wouldn't be shocking. In the 2 spot, I've got multi-time Ledgestone winner Katrina Allen. But in the 1 spot, she's been chilling. She didn't go to Europe. but she's going to get that dub. Haley King taking it down.
I mean, this feels like Smugs, right? Like these two have a lot of similarities to them, and Haley plays great at these courses. So I love the pick for Haley, and I'm excited to see her back on tour again. In my 3 spot, I have Kat Mertsch. Same deal, right? Took a break, didn't go to Europe. I think she's really going to have an opportunity now with some rest to play well here. In my 2 spot, I have Katrina Allen. I initially had her to win, and I made a change. And you want to know why, Charlie?
Wow.
You want to know why? No disrespect to Katrina, but you said that you're giving Owen the Upshot bump, but you're putting her back a place from last season. Owen Scoggins to win the tournament. She could do it this season. Owen Doggins, I'm giving her the 1 this week. I mean, look, when we were just talking about it, right? That Sunset is a place where Owen can excel, and if she stays in the fairway at Northwood, that's another opportunity that she's going to gain strokes on people. It's the same game plan Missy won with, and Owen can replicate it. She's throwing a little further this year. Upshot bump. I'm giving the win to Owen.
All right, MPO. Who you got?
In MPO, in my 3rd spot, I'm taking a guy who's been quiet this season, but often will show up at the later half of the tour. I've got Chris Dickerson. Chris, I mean, I really don't feel like we've talked about him hardly all this season. And I think that this is the stretch where you're going to see Chris start to turn it up. We have in the past. And I want to be ahead of the curve on that one and take a point. So I'm going with Chris Dickerson in the 3 spot. In the 2 spot, oh, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, you saw me start to react.
Yeah, I did.
I was just going to say, Chris Dickerson was a sneaky top 10 at European Open.
See, and I didn't even realize that. I forgot. Like we mentioned it, and it's so easy to forget.
Yeah, no,
and
he was not in mix. He was not. in the mix.
No, he wasn't.
He didn't get into the shed adjacent to the Hall of Fame. He did not. Continue.
Well, my 2nd place goes to a guy who, with this season, probably would be in the shed. That's James Proctor. That guy has been in the mix so many times this season and has had a really, really good season. What I think's been impressive to me about James Proctor, though, is the variety of courses that he's performed well in, and I think that's going to bode well for him at really a true Woods and Open combination, just given his consistent overall play. I give him the 2. But number 1, horses for courses, man. If you're not picking Ricky Wysocki to win this tournament, I don't know what you're doing. I know that this hasn't been Ricky's season. I know he's been out and it's been a truncated season, but I picked him to win already once this season, and I was right. And Ricky's won like the past 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row. I had it up and then I closed it, which was just a mistake. But even when Ricky is not playing as well in any given season, Ricky performs well at Ledgestone, and so I think if you're not picking Ricky, you're giving away points. So Ricky Wysocki gets my 1.
Well, I guess I'm giving away points, Josh.
I mean, I'll tell you afterwards on Tuesday that you are. Don't worry.
I have Ricky on my podium in my 2 spot.
Good.
Because I respect the man. I respect the man in Peoria.
Okay.
I do. In the 3 spot, I have Gannon Burr. Gannon is just that he's going to be there all the time. I feel like, he's coming off of a tournament that he very much could have won. Mm-hmm. And game looks sharp. In the 1 spot, though, it's Vinny Revenge Tour. He's not happy with what happened at European Open. You can count on that. He's about to come out here and show you that everybody needs to put some more respect on his name. So I've got Vinny over Ricky. Could be a fun one, too.
I hope so. I hope they don't share the podium or share the winner's circle again.
that was crazy here. All right, so over under, you got one?
I do have one, and it is about hole 12. I went
of course.
And pulled, of course, it has to be every year, and I think it's probably the exact same as it was last year. And I don't remember if it was. I think it's the same number, but I don't remember. I went and pulled the stats from last year. 3 birdies in hole 12. And I think Anthony Barella accounted for 2 of those, as Nate was saying.
Wow.
It's not an easy to birdie hole. Hole 12, over under 3.5 birdies this season.
Hang on.
Okay.
I'm looking up the Peoria weather.
Okay.
Rain Thursday, rain Saturday, rain Sunday. I'm taking the under.
All right. I like it. I guess we'll see. I'm excited. I love this course, Charlie. It's so great.
This was a tried and true strategy in Prize Picks, and then they got killed so bad by disc golf bettors that they had to just straight up take the ball and leave. So, all right. Yeah, I'm taking the under on 3.5, but we'll see. Thunderstorms in the forecast for the final round. Just cuidado.
Oh my gosh. Stop it.
What? Hey, it's Illinois in the summer, baby.
Yeah, what do you do?
All right, that is going to do it for this week's show. We will be back with you on Sunday. Rapid reacts coming your way following the Ledgestone. And I know Josh is going to break it all down for us. And Josh, you're playing a big tournament this weekend, right? You still have to find a time to watch your favorite tournament of the year.
I know. I'll probably have the live coverage up while I am, because remember, I don't have to keep score yet. That's for next year. So this year, I'm going to walk up on Friday and Saturday morning, and I'm going to say, look, I don't care. Not today.
Guys, my phone is almost dead.
they're going to
screaming.
They're going to hear the DGN on the background. Yeah, no, I'll be keeping track of it for sure, and I'll be catching post-produce or anything I miss.
Hey guys, I don't have a phone. I have no phone. I don't own a phone, and I can't write. So
right. I'll do paper. Give me paper. I can still watch DGN if I'm doing paper scores.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and this was a fun one. We'll talk to you next week, and if you're a subscriber, we'll talk to you on Sunday right here on the Upshot.